All right, so what is the Facebook ad funnel? And how does this affect your results on Facebook? So, to put it simply, your Facebook ad funnel, what I'm referring to is how your ads are used on the platform. Now, every customer journey, the first thing you have to understand is that every customer journey is going to be different. And the ad that's going to get credit for the sale will typically be the last ad that they click on, or the last touch point. Now, it's a little bit more complicated, but in short, if they see an ad that is top of funnel, and then they see an ad that is middle of funnel, and then they see an ad that is bottom of funnel, and they click on that ad and buy, the bottom of funnel ad is going to get credit for that sale. Now, that does not mean that the top of funnel ad and the middle of funnel ad didn't have an effect on that decision to purchase. And this is why attribution alone will not tell you the full story on what's going on inside your ad account. So what do I mean? Let's use an example here. So we're going to say we have an ad one, we'll call this ad one, 1x ROAS. Now it is spending 50% of the daily budget, and it has the lowest frequency. All right, so this is ad one. Ad one has a worse ROAS. It's spending most of the daily budget on this specific ad. Maybe, for example, this is a founder story ad. This may be some kind of skit ad that's designed to get attention or whatever the case may be. Maybe it's a founder story ad, whatever. And this ad is getting a lot of spend, but the ROAS is worse. So the ROAS or CPA, whichever one you want to look at, we'll assume is worse on this ad. Now we got ad two. So for ad two, it's spending, let's say for example, this one's coming in at a 1.4 ROAS. We're just using ROAS for the sake of this example. It's spending 30-ish% of the budget. And it has a higher daily frequency than one. Whoops. So ad two is going to be middle of funnel. It's getting some spend. It's getting a good amount of spend. It's coming in at a better ROAS than ad one, but it's still not going to have as low of a cost per purchase or maybe as high of a ROAS, depending on what you're looking at inside the ad account, as ad three and maybe ad four. We'll say ad three and four. So let's add, whoops. We're going to add another box. Now we have ad three. Comes in at a 2.2 ROAS. It's spending 20%, 20-ish% of the budget. Highest frequency. So the frequency inside the ad account is referring to how many times that ad is being shown to the same people, essentially. If your frequency is 1, then everybody has seen that ad one time. If your frequency was a 2, then in theory, everybody has seen that ad 2 times. So ad 3 has the best ROAS, but it's also spending the least budget. Ad 3, maybe it's an offer ad, maybe it's something like a review ad or whatever the case is. And so you look at this, and maybe, for example, you're new to running ads. You look at these ads here and you say, well, I'm just going to turn off ad 1. I'm going to turn off ad 1, and that should mean that I'm going to have a somewhere around a 1.7 ROAS. Now I'm going to go from a 1 to a 1.7. And so you turn off ad 1, and then what happens? This is what will tend to happen if you've ever ran ads, and you've probably seen this before. This is what will tend to happen when you turn off that top of funnel ad that's getting a lower ROAS, or a worse cost per purchase at a lower frequency, and it's spending more budget. What will tend to happen is now all of a sudden you turn this off. So we're going to mark this out. Let's see if I can mark this out. All right, so ad 1 is off. Now what happens to ad 2? All of a sudden ad 2 goes to a 0.7 ROAS. And then ad 3 goes to, let's say, for example, a 1.1 ROAS. And you're like, what the heck? Why did my ads all of a sudden get worse when I turned off the worst performing ad? That's because the ads work together. And this is something that a lot of marketing gurus are not going to tell you. And they're not going to tell you this because they want to, a lot of times, in my opinion at least, they want to mislead you. They want to try to get you to buy a product. And so they're not always transparent with you on how this stuff really works. They'll show you these results of these great ads that they're running, but they don't show you the full campaign, or they don't tell you the full story. So how do you prevent this from happening? The first thing you got to understand is the ads function together. It's like an ecosystem. You got different players on the team. One player has one job, another player has another job. If you have a football team, for example, your quarterback has a certain job that he has to perform. Your running back also has a certain job that he has to perform. That job is not necessarily the same as the quarterback. And it's the same way when we're talking about how the ads work together as a team. The ads work as a team. And this ad right here that looked so bad, right here, this ad that looked the worst was actually probably the best ad. And it was actually probably driving a lot of business in for the business. Now, let's say, for example, we take away ad 3. Now, we're going to try this again. Ad 3 was a bottom of funnel ad, maybe an offer. Offers tend to be bottom of funnel, usually. They're going to fall into the most aware stage of awareness. If you think about your stages of market awareness, the largest, the hardest typically to convert, and the one that's going to be typically the most expensive is going to be your more unaware ads. Now, a lot of times when you're looking at ads, especially videos, really with many different ads, they're going to fall into multiple different stages of awareness in some extent. But generally speaking, you have 5 stages of market awareness: unaware, problem aware, solution aware, product aware, and then aware or most aware. So people who are in that most aware stage for your product, they will typically be the easiest to convert. And so something as simple as an offer that is showing them some kind of deal or the right price or some kind of discount could be what pushes them over the edge and finally gets them to buy, because they're already ready to buy. They're just waiting for a sale. They're waiting for the right price or whatever it may be. So as you move up in the stages of market awareness, it gets harder and harder typically to convert people, and it requires greater and greater skill to be able to do that. So let's say, for example, we turn off ad 3, and this was just basically some kind of offer ad, or maybe, for example, it was a testimonial, or it was some kind of objection ad, something that is going to be more mid to bottom of funnel by nature. So what's going to happen to these other ads here? So ad 1, originally it was at like a 1x ROAS. Let's say this one was at somewhere around a 1.4 originally. Now we turn off that bottom of funnel ad. So maybe what happens is, maybe this one right here might get a little bit worse. Maybe this one goes down to a 0.8. Maybe this goes down to like a 1.2 or whatever the case is. If that ad that was bottom of funnel was driving purchases. If it was actually helping to drive purchases, not just taking credit for sales that would already happen. So what could happen is the account could get worse. And then once again, you turn off this one, and once again, same kind of deal there. So what are some examples of how to make top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel ads? How do you actually make these ads? So that is a great question. So a top of funnel ad is generally going to be good at getting attention, the right kind. Now, for example, in an account that I'm running ads for, the top of funnel, one of the top of funnel ads, it has a high hook rate, and this is not what I would consider a primary metric, but it can be a good indicator that the ad is good at getting attention. So this specific ad has a really good hook rate. It's a kind of a brand story ad where the owner of the brand is talking about his brand and this new product release and everything. And so with this ad, it has a really strong hook rate. But if you look at the cost per result of that ad, it tends to be lower, or it tends to be worse than a lot of the other ads in the account. And so it may have a worse cost per result. And it gets more spend, but the ad is getting people into the funnel, and it's bringing people into the funnel. So top of funnel ads, they tend to be good at getting attention. And they tend to be good at holding that attention. I would say good at holding people's attention. And the key here is you have to know how to get the right type of attention, because I could make an ad, for example. I could work with some creator or whoever it is, and let's say, for example, we make a top of funnel ad that gets a lot of attention, but it's the wrong type of attention. Maybe we do some kind of prank video and there's no real marketing in it, or whatever the case is. And maybe, for example, this ad gets a bunch of engagement, but we're not really selling the product in this ad. It may not necessarily be the right type of attention that we're getting, and then we're just paying money to get the wrong type of attention. Now, where would these ads typically sit in terms of market awareness? If you're thinking about your different stages of market awareness, well, if these are at the top of the funnel, these could be unaware, they could be product aware, or not product, problem aware. And so these ads may sit higher up in the funnel, but they may not necessarily convert as well. So your middle of funnel ads, these ads, for example, it could be something like, what's an example of, so I'll just list some examples of top of funnel ads here, just to start. Founder story, skit ads, etc. There's many different examples of good top of funnel ads, but those are just some. You got a skit ad, you have a founder story. It could be even like a podcast or something. Now, for a middle of funnel ad, maybe they're already aware of what it is that you're selling, but they need to be educated on that. And they need to see behind the scenes on what it is that you're doing, or whatever the case is. So the middle of funnel ad, this could be something like an order packing video. This could be something like, let's say, for example, and it really just depends. I mean, this depends on a lot of stuff. It depends on the brand. It could be UGC in some cases. So let's say, for example, you have somebody make a UGC review, or you have them do scripted UGC where you provide them a script and a brief, and they make UGC content for your brand. Those could be some examples of middle of funnel ads. Now, bottom of funnel, ads that are more mid to bottom of funnel, these will probably sit lower in the stages of market awareness. So in terms of the stages of market awareness, these bottom of funnel ads are going to tend to be probably most aware / aware or product aware. So product aware ads could be objection handling, how it works, etc. So you could have different videos, for example, that either the founder or somebody shoots where they're literally just answering common objections about how to use the product. Now, it could also be testimonials. Let's see here. I don't know why this is not a bullet point. Oh, well. Well, let's see. We'll just leave it. Okay, so it could be objection handling, testimonials. It could be offer-based ads. So testimonials, it could be a static ad that's a testimonial, or it could also be just UGC testimonials or real customer reviews. So where a customer is sending a video review, for example. So we'll add that, customer video review, etc. Offer-based ads, and other various static ad formats. So statics tend to, this isn't always the case, but a lot of times what you may see is that statics may tend to sit either in the mid or bottom of the funnel, while the videos tend to be upper to middle funnel. And it really just depends. These ads, in this example, it could be different depending on the brand. You could have a brand where the founder story is middle funnel. You could have a brand where the top of funnel ads, for example, are static ads, and the messaging in those static ads could just be really good and be really broadly appealing. So it really just depends. Now, what will you typically see? What would be something realistic that you may see if you're looking at this and you're looking at the ads in this account? And let's say all these are the ads that are running. So, for example, hold on one second. This objection handling ad or these static ads or these offer-based ads, whatever it may be, these might be coming in, for instance, at a, let's say, $20 CPA. So these are the most efficient in the account. These middle of funnel ads right here, for example, this order packing video might be coming in at a $35 CPA, or the UGC might be coming in at a $35 CPA. And then these ads at the top of funnel, these top of funnel ads that are having a lower frequency, higher spend, they will likely have a higher CPA. So you may see a $50 CPA for your top of funnel ads. So why is that? We talked about this, and I explained this briefly, but why is that the ads at the top of the funnel are going to have a higher CPA? It's because by nature, they are appealing to a broader audience of people. And so since these ads are able to reach a broader audience of people, then what that means is that by default, they will tend to have a worse CPA because they're hitting broader audiences of people. And you still want these ads to be able to get the right people in the door. And that's the important part there. It's not that you want everybody in the door for a very cheap cost. It's not that you want your ads to just spend a bunch of budget and have a high CPA. You want to get the right type of people into the door who would be interested in buying. And that can be the tricky part. So top of funnel ads, this is where a lot of people tend to struggle and tend to get hung up because these tend to be the hardest ads to really get to work because they have to bring cold traffic in the door. It's high quality traffic, and that will eventually convert. And that could be what really moves the needle for a lot of businesses. And another thing to note, if you were to, let's say, for example, you have a really good top of funnel ad. And this is one of the nuances of understanding this stuff. And you were to turn off some offer-based ads. What you may see is your cost per purchase might, not always, but it could even get lower if you were to turn off some ads at the very bottom of the funnel. Hold on. Sometimes what you may see is that the ads at the bottom of the funnel may look good, but that may not necessarily mean that they are ultimately what's responsible for really driving the sales, if that makes sense. Now, you can have good ads at the bottom of the funnel, but you can also have ads that are really good at taking credit for sales from other ads. And so it's important to understand the difference there. And there's some certain things you can look for to be able to try to spot that. But I'm not going to get into that, in too much detail on this video. All you need to know at the end of the day is the difference between top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel ads. And then another thing I would say is one of the things that can really determine where an ad will sit in the funnel is the messaging that's used in the ads and really the copy that's used in the ads as well. But also, of course, how good that ad is at holding attention, in getting people's attention and getting the right type of attention. So all those factors can affect how the ad gets shown in the funnel. So let's say you have some ads where they're getting a bunch of spend. Most of the spend is going to one or two ads, 1, 2, 3 different ads. They're getting the majority of the spend. The frequency on those ads each day is very low. And you're also noticing maybe some secondary or soft metrics where the hook rate is really strong on these ads. And so that may be a good sign that you could very well have some good top of funnel ads, but maybe they aren't closing the deal. And so then part of your strategy may be to look at the ads in the account, and then you have to figure out what ads specifically are needed in that account to be able to close the deal. So it could be making videos like order packing videos. It could be adding in UGC into the account, and then also a mix of static ads with various different angles. And by adding those ads in, you could bring down that account average CPA to get it closer to or within your target. And it may even be ads where by nature, the ads may not appeal to as broad of an audience of people. For example, if I make a video that is a review video, I have a customer shoot a video, or maybe I get a video for a UGC creator. If it's just a testimonial that's a review, that ad may not get as much spend. But that ad might, if it's a good review, come in at a lower cost per purchase. So the cost per purchase may be lower. It may help to bring down that account average, but it may not be as scalable, if that makes sense. So same thing with, for example, a good offer-based ad. Maybe, for example, you don't have any ads that are offer-based or good product-aware ads inside the account. And so you add in some, offer-based ads that are more aware, where you were calling out a sale. That's all the ad basically is. In the offer-based ad is you're calling out a sale that would entice them to buy. So maybe from there, a good ad could help to bring down that account average. And so that is ultimately the goal if we're just talking about reducing the account CPA by understanding what to test inside the account. In my opinion, knowing what to test and how to go about testing it is more important than just throwing a bunch of ads in the account and hoping something works. Because if you're doing that, then you will never really know how to gauge what's working and what's not. If there's not some kind of process that you're following to determine what is working and what is not. So it's important to understand how the ad account actually works to be able to solve problems in your account, because you are bound to eventually run into problems at some point that you have to solve. And so it's good to have that way of thinking to know how to solve those problems. So anyways, if you found this helpful on explaining the Facebook ad funnel and how it works, feel free to leave a like, drop a comment below, and let me know what you want to see next. But anyways, that is it. Peace.